Hello everyone, how are we all doing? Now, I want to do a video talking about why when we're triggered, we start doing compulsions again, and how easy it is to fall back into that compulsive cycle. Because when you're triggered, the feeling is very uncomfortable. We know that. You don't need me to tell you that, you're living that right now. So when that happens, what an OCD sufferer tends to do is look for that quick relief. Look for that rid of the feeling. Looking to get change in how they feel, or just that sudden immediate change of feelings, because like we said, it's very intense. It's all going to feel very, very real. It's going to feel very uncomfortable, very unpleasant. It's that forefront of your mind. Within seconds, for example, you could be convinced that you're going to jail. Within seconds, you could be convinced you're going to be stuck with OCD for the rest of your life. Within seconds, you could be convinced that you could be locked in an internal state or an internal sensation, especially with sensory motor OCD. Within seconds, you could be convinced that nothing's real, that you're living in a simulation with existential. That was a big one for me. Or that nothing else matters, that kind of feeling. What's the point? Nothing's real. Not that depersonalization, that derealization feeling. It feels like, well, what is the point to anything? To your whole life feels completely pointless and meaningless, and nothing's worthwhile. Okay, within seconds, you can be convinced that you're dying of cancer, that you've discovered a symptom, that you could have prevented it earlier, that you should have known, better, and that's it. The rest of your life is now ruined. How could you have been so stupid? Writing yourself off, and so on. Okay, so within seconds, that is how the cycle works. Now, when you are initially triggered, the main thing, what I advise people in coaching calls, is to let that trigger play out. Don't look for a quick fix. Don't look to get rid of that feeling. But the main thing of all, and I really highlight this, is resisting the compulsions in that moment. Because it is so easy and it's so tempting to give into the urge, the OCD pull, to jump in and figure it out. Oh shit, I'm triggered. I need to get an answer. Okay, let's find a solution. Let's find a fix to the problem. Okay, I need certainty. Okay, what's the answer? You know, I used to do that all the time. As soon as I was triggered, I was like, okay, let's try and get an answer. Let's try. Why won't I be stuck forever? Okay, why don't I be stuck forever? Why don't I go to jail for the rest of my life? What have I done wrong? Have I done anything wrong? That constant self-reassurance, that internal dialogue. Okay, maybe it involves the compulsion, so sort of avoidance. Okay. So if I was triggered, for example, if I was out in public and I was triggered, it would maybe then avoid certain people, avoid walking a certain way, avoid, or maybe not avoid, but starting confessing and maybe reassurance and venting and whining and complaining and playing the victim, and just the unhealthy addictive behaviours as well. They were a big one for me when I was triggered. So, for example, my eating fatty, unhealthy foods went up, sugary foods, that happened a lot. Maybe I'd drink excessively, watching porn excessively, scrolling on my phone, that was a big one. And that scrolling, you know, just aimlessly scrolling, not looking for anything, just that relief, that escape from reality, because being triggered is very uncomfortable. So I was doing that a lot. Gambling wasn't really a problem, but sort of chasing a feeling, chasing a high, chasing that dopamine rush, chasing that excitement, chasing that just surreal, unreal feeling, chasing that amazing feeling, that becomes a big problem, especially when triggered, because you're just desperate to get rid of how you currently feel, because it is incredibly difficult and challenging feeling. Okay, so you've got to be very aware of these kind of behaviours, because they are what hold people back. And I see it all the time. Oversleeping, that's a big one. So let's say you're triggered with, let's say, real event false memory, and the guilt is just latched on severely 24/7. That's chronic guilt, latched in firmly. It's easy to lie in bed a bit longer. Oh, you know what, I'll snooze the alarm, I'll go to sleep for an hour longer. And before you know it, it's been 2 hours, then it's 2.5 hours, then it's 3 hours, and you still haven't moved from bed. You're just scrolling on your phone, partaking in unhealthy addictive behaviours. So it's all a loop, it's all that cycle that we engage in. Now, going back to the original point, when that trigger initially hits, don't underestimate the realness of OCD. Don't underestimate the intensity, because within seconds, you are going to be totally and utterly convinced that your worst case scenario is real, that it's happening, that it's going to happen, because the OCD is always looking for that evidence to prove why your fear is coming true, or why your fear is true. It's always looking for proof. It's always looking for that, no, this happened, that means it's real. Or because you didn't do this, or because you acted in this way, or because you said this, that means your core fear is now a reality. And that's what OCD is looking to do. So when that trigger hits, when that panic spikes, when the anxiety spikes, when the guilt goes through the roof, when you feel very down and depressed and very low, that is why so many sufferers, like me included, I used to always look for a quick fix. Always tried to get rid of that uncomfortable feeling, because I was like, oh, I can't stand being like this. I hate it. I need peace. I need to feel relaxed. I need to feel calm. I just need it gone. I need it gone. I need it gone. But the problem of that fuels the compulsive cycle. Okay, we have to build the brain like a muscle. Treat it like a muscle. So when you're triggered, and when I was a lot further down the journey, and when I've been in a little while, I'd say at least a year, 18 months, 2 years, I got into the habit of, when I was triggered, I viewed it as, okay, I'm going to let this play out. I'm not going to engage. So with the rumination, remember the rumination is automatic. That's primarily a symptom of OCD. But engaging with it, so we learn to disengage with the cycle. So letting it play out. Yes, but main thing, not giving into the compulsion. Saying, okay, I'm not going to work it out. I'm not going to cancel any plans. I'm not going to confess. I'm not going to vent. I'm not going to avoid. I'm not going to put anything off. I'm not going to put my life on hold whilst I work this thing out in my head. No, that is a compulsive trap, a compulsive cycle that never delivers long-term results. OCD never delivers on its promises, because if it did, you would not be watching this video of me right now. You'd be smiling from ear to ear, beaming smile, doing handstands down the street in a permanent state of happiness and peace and contentment. But you're not, because even when you confess, OCD moves the goalposts, it finds something else. Even when you seek reassurance, even when you Google, even when you cancel plans, even when you put things off, even when you stop socializing, even when you engage with unhealthy addictive behaviors, OCD is always looking for that next thing that you can't accept. It's always looking for the next thing, the next thing, the next move, the next move. It's always one step ahead of us until we get one step ahead of it. And that is by looking at our core beliefs, looking at our rational fears, seeing how we can break that down with our perception, with our with belief work, with our judgment, with our 0 to 100 catastrophizing, with our irrational thinking, so our musts, our shoulds, and also the exposures and so on, getting used to the fear, confronting the fear, walking through the eye of the storm, and so on. Okay, and that's so important. And just touching on that point with OCD never delivering on its promises, because I started viewing OCD as a con artist. Okay, now we were like this: if a con artist kept stealing money from you, kept tricking you, kept scamming you out of something, right? You wouldn't keep going back to it. You would go, oh, this time I'm going to trust you. And off you go, shake hands, and they steal your money. And they steal possession. And they trick you once again. Now, OCD is a bit like that, because the pull and the urge to engage with the cycle, to, oh, yes, do this compulsion, you'll get relief. Oh, yes, try and work this out one more time. Try and get an answer. Try and figure out. Now, don't think for a second, I don't know how difficult that is or how hard it is not to engage. I have lived that. I've fully experienced that. And I fell down this trap many, 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 many times. Don't underestimate that. And you will slip up as you're trying to do this, because you're human and you're dealing with very resilient, challenging disorder. So let's have compassion, but also tough love is important as well. But you wouldn't go back to the con artist. And same as OCD. When we keep going back to confessing, to compulsions, to avoidance, to reassurance, to Googling, to unhealthy addictive behaviors, for that quick relief, that escape mechanism, all you're doing is shaking hands with OCD, and just as about to shake your hand, it then pulls its hand away and then never delivers on that promise. And back in the cycle that you go, round and round and round and round and round, going down that rabbit hole, spiraling to no quick relief, because it morphs, it changes, it switches up, it finds something else. Okay, so view it as a con artist. Okay, you wouldn't go back to a con artist. You've got to really treat it seriously, not going back to compulsions, not going back to the compulsive cycle. Okay, OCD is excellent at tricking you, at fooling you. I've got you again. You fell for the confession again. You fell for the venting again. It's got you nowhere. Back down the rabbit hole you go. Okay, so it's so important to resist those compulsions. I cannot highlight that enough, especially when triggered. Okay, especially when triggered, because when you're triggered, it's so easy to slip back into the compulsive cycle, to slip back into our old irrational way of thinking because of the intensity and because of the realness of this disorder.